So in this video I'm going to repair this rear jacking point on the rear sill of the E30. As you can see, I've already made a start on this, which I needed to do this rear arch outer skin repair, which is in a previous video. I'm just going to show you a quick recap now to show you how I got to this point.
So I'm now wondering if I should be buying a sill repair panel as well.
So as you can see, the box section inside here is actually quite a complicated part, quite corrugated almost. So I've kind of cheated by putting a solid piece in of thicker metal and lapping it just slightly behind and then welding it on. It's quite ugly, but remember, it's going to be hidden. Once I've done this flat piece on, bent it in and welded it with some spot welds to here too, I realised that there's this semicircular part almost of the box section which actually extends down to meet the jacking point, and this I'd cut off and it was just flat. So what I've done is I've curved a piece of metal and welded that on to extend this tower almost again, and now that should meet the bottom skin of the outer sill skin to give strength to that jacking point so you can jack up the car from that skin without it collapsing. So the next thing to do now is to make myself an outer skin patch with the correct bends in it, being mindful of the fact it needs to bulge in this area to accommodate this tower. It's going to be quite awkward and complicated, this, but let's have a go. Just for reference, here's the part that I cut off from here. It lived just there previously. As you can see, it's in an absolute state, that rusted to hell. Lots of these are at this point. I'll have to be mindful of this strange shaped piece at the bottom. I'll have to fabricate that on and add it in. As for this plastic bung, I don't really know why that's there, to be honest. I'm not going to worry about it, I don't think. Right, so I've got my patch cut and reasonably well in place. The magnets aren't quite strong enough to deal with it, so it's causing me a bit of frustration there. But it's looking reasonably good. I'll need to do a bit of hammering at the bottom to get it in when I get to that point, but it's a good start. Now, I've used the back end of a hammer just to round this off to give clearance for that. And I've got my curves in, which I did just using the vise and the hammer as well. I ended up cutting the two slots out completely here to enable me to do that, and I'll have to patch that back in afterwards, but that shouldn't be too big of a deal. I think it'll be okay. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weld in some supports behind here that's going to help me fit this up nice and flush and help me weld it in properly. So I've just cut this offcut and drilled a few holes in it, which I'm going to use to plug weld this on from the back. I'm going to put it there and use it as a support for my patch, which is going to sit over the top. So I need to get this welded on solid and then I can start worrying about the patch. I think I'll also put in a couple on the sides as well. The point of this support is to help me get my patch firmly in place, but also it helps me avoid blowing holes through when I'm trying to weld this up later. pretty solid. Right, so I've done my tack welds all the way around. Took my time with that, so I made sure I didn't warp the panel. I haven't done any flat disking to grind them down yet. I'm just going to leave them as they are for now. So the next thing to move on to is welding down here. I'm going to do some plug welds here, which is obviously why I've drilled the holes. And I'm hoping to do some welding to join that tower to this outer skin as well, and grind that down so it's nice and smooth afterwards. That's the next step. Right, so I got it all welded in, and I've also used the flat disc to take off the tops of all the welds, and it's not perfect again, but it's definitely good enough. And I'm really happy with how this part came out here. It's joined up really nicely to that tower that's inside, welded, and it almost looks OEM, to be honest, if you compare it to the one on the other side. But I am left with this gap at the bottom, this hole, which I need to cover up with an extra plate, which I'm going to form and weld in now. And then after that, there's an outer piece that goes on here, which I'm going to have to fabricate and weld on. And then it should be hunky-dory and look pretty much factory OEM. To get my shape for this, I'm just going to use masking tape. So I've put two pieces together. I'm going to stick it on like this, make sure it fits spot on. Like that. And then I'm going to draw around my hole. And now I've got this crude drawing to stick onto a piece of sheet metal and cut out exact. Funnily enough, this must be the piece that I cut off the original patch so I could bang that tower in. Right, so I've just cut this section out of a thicker sheet of 1.5mm steel, and I'm intending to replicate this jacking point reinforcing plate, let's call it. So that's 3 solid plug welds on this jacking point reinforcing plate, and I've also put a spritz of primer over it just to prevent it from flash rusting. With it connecting up to the tower inside, I think that's absolutely solid, and I think it's a factory strong jacking point repair, and I'm quite pleased with it, to be honest. I don't have any qualms jacking the car up from this point in the future ever. Still got a lot to do on the car, including this inner arch, which I'll be coming to next. So if you're not subscribed, why not subscribe and follow along with the project? And why not give us a thumbs up too? Thanks for watching.